Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Excel. Today, I'm going to be talking about pivot tables. Pivot tables are a popular Excel feature that allow you to pivot your view of your data and ask questions about your data. Okay, and they're especially useful when you have large amounts of data. You'll see that it's very similar to what we talked about in the sorting and filtering video. Okay, so at this point, if you haven't watched sorting and filtering yet, I encourage you to do that first because it really will help you understand pivot tables that much more. Okay, so just real quick, let's just get acquainted with what a pivot table looks like. So right on the screen right now, I have a pivot table already set up. So you'll see on the left here, we have our initial data range. This is like basically the original data that we created. And it's tracking the sales by region for the year 2020. Okay, so this is our initial data range, or what we'll call our master data range. Now on the right here, this is our pivot table, and you'll see that it's basically just incorporating the exact same data and just kind of shifting our focus on certain aspects of it. So for example, we see here we have a bunch of names. Okay, so this relates to the salesperson column here in column A. Here we have names of regions, okay, Far West, Great Lakes, Mideast, etc. And these relate to the region column B. Over here we have number of orders, and this data relates to column C for number of orders. And then of course we have total sales over here, which of course relates to column D, total sales. Okay, so again, it incorporates all of this data and just allows us to get different views of different things, again, depending on the question we have. So one of the big benefits of pivot tables is that they're very easy to construct and deconstruct. So we can constantly build them and then take them apart and rebuild them depending on our question. Okay, so it's all question based. We don't have to build it one way and we're stuck with it. We can always just deconstruct it and rebuild it depending on the question we have. And in a little bit, I'm going to show you how we're going to do that. The other big benefit to pivot tables is that you do not have to work with your master data, so it kind of avoids the risk of possibly messing up our original data. So if we're sorting and filtering this data here, we stand the chance of maybe moving something around, deleting something, and just messing something up inadvertently. So pivot table basically will export all this to a separate section and allows you to play with it over here. That way you're not messing up anything from that original data. Okay, so let's see how all this comes together. So I'm going to go down here to this tab and click on this 2020. Okay, and here's that same data range but without the pivot table. So I'm going to show you how we're going to build it, and you'll see it's very, very simple. So again, this is our sales by region for the year 2020. So we just need to go ahead and build our pivot table. So the first step is the easiest. We just need to insert a pivot table. Okay, and if you've watched a few of these other videos, you'll see that it's very similar in terms of how we need to select the data. So the first thing I'm going to do is go up here to the Insert tab, and then I'm going to go right here to the Tables group and click on Pivot Table. Okay, now this little dialog box pops up. It says Create Pivot Table, and you'll see that it already, in my case, it went ahead and just pre-selected the data range. It just recognized it right off the bat. If it did not do that for some reason, you would just highlight your data. You would just select it. And make sure you include any labels, like these column labels. If you were to have a title above this, you would not include that. You're only including data values and the column or row labels in this range. So you'll see here, it populated it for me right here. Okay, A1 through D33. Now the next step is to come down here for where it says choose where you want the pivot table report to be placed. As a default, it's going to say new worksheet, but let's say we just want to keep this on the existing worksheet, so I'm going to click on that. And then it just needs you to specify a location. So what that means is where you want the pivot table to start. So I'm going to click in the location box right here. excuse me, the location box right here. And so basically it just needs you to put in a cell. So let's say I wanted to start here in F1. I'm just going to type in F1. You can also select it, but it's easier in this case just to type it right in there. So F1, and then I'm going to click OK. And there we go. Okay, so put a little, basically where the pivot table is going to begin. Now, in addition to that, first of all, it gave me a special contextual tab for pivot table tools up here. There's an Analyze tab and a Design tab. Okay, now also to the right, it gave me a pivot table fields format pane. Okay, this is basically, this area here on the right is where we're going to actually build our pivot table. Okay, now again, we're typically you're going to be building your table depending on your question. But let's just go over a few kind of general guidelines first. Okay, so we see basically two sections over here. We see our fields, and you'll see that these fields relate to your column labels: salesperson, region, number of orders, and total sales. Okay, so those are the fields. Now down here we have areas: filters, columns, rows, and values. And these areas are how your pivot table is arranged or constructed. And it's very simple. You simply take one of these fields, click and drag it down into an area. And you can have multiple fields in under one area. Okay. So typically in the values area here is where you would put numerical data. Okay. And then your text data would typically go under rows. All right. You could put text data under columns, but as you'll see, it works out a little easier. It's a bit easier to read if you stick to rows. Okay. And then filters is basically just a way to filter your entire pivot table with just one value. And we'll go over that in a little bit. So let's just go ahead and start building this just to see how it all comes together. So as I said, typically the numerical data is going to go under values. So I'm going to start here with number of orders. I'm going to click and drag and place it under values. And look at your pivot table on the actual worksheet, and you'll see it starts to build itself. And what it's doing is it's actually, not only is it incorporating the number of orders data, but it's also adding them as a default. Notice how it says sum of number of orders. So it's also adding them together to give you a grand total. So let's say I also want total sales. I'm going to also put that in the values area as well. So let's do that. Put it under number of orders here and let go. So now it also gave me a sum of total sales. Okay, it's also adding up those totals as well. Now you'll also notice that it gave each of these its own separate column. Now let's look over here at our pivot table fields pane, and you'll see under the columns area it says values. That's because it's using the columns area now to incorporate multiple fields in the values area. So whenever you have more than one field in the values area, it's going to automatically be displayed in columns. That's why I'm saying it's typically easier to stick to rows for your text data, because the pivot table is going to use the columns to display the values information. Okay, so now let's see what happens when we put in our text data. So I'm going to take region here, the region field, and put it under rows. And let's see what it's doing. Let's look at our worksheet, and we can see that it gave me each value from the region field. Okay, each value, Far West, Great Lakes, these are all individual values. Okay, and of course it's coming from our original data here, all those individual values. Now next to each region, it's giving you the sum of the number of orders per region and the sum of total sales per region. And then it's also giving you a grand total for everything down here. So it's adding up not only per region, but also a grand total. Okay, now let's say I want to also include the salesperson. So I'm going to put that in rows as well. Now, just like with sorting and filtering, the rule is the same. Whenever we are, depending on what I put in the rows, I want to make sure it goes broad to specific, top to bottom. So I'm going to put salesperson, and I'm going to make sure I put it underneath region, not above it, because you want to work broad to specific, top to bottom. So I'm going to let go, and here we go. So let's look at our worksheet again, our pivot table here, and we see it's breaking it down first by region. Okay, so our first example says Far West, and then within each region, each name, each salesperson. And so as a default right now, each region is alphabetized, okay? And each name within each region is also alphabetized. So it's basically doing what we did in sorting and filtering. It's sorting by region and then by name, A to Z. Okay, and then aside each name or each salesperson, it's giving you their individual number of orders and their individual total sales. It's still maintaining the sum of those values per region and also the grand total down here. So it's still maintaining all of that data, all of those formulas. Okay, now that I have this built, you'll see that first of all, next to each of these regions, there's these little collapse and expand buttons. So if I only want to look at a few of these, let's say I don't need Far West, I could always just collapse it, and it just hides that, just to kind of clean it up and help me hone in on the things that I need to focus on. And then I can just click on the plus sign and expand it again if I need to. You'll also notice that where it says row labels, there's a little drop down here, and what it's doing is it's actually giving you a filter. So if I only need to look at, let's say, Far West, I would click on the check next to select all to deselect all of them, and then select only the one I need, which in this case would be Far West. I would click OK, and now it's just filtering it to Far West. Okay, this is why I'm saying that sorting and filtering video would really help you understand this better. We go over a lot of this stuff in that video. Now, again, if I need to clear this, I just click on the little filter button here. Come down here and click clear filter from region, and then it goes away. Okay, I can also sort things on the pivot table itself. So let's say I have all this information, but I want to sort not necessarily by name in the region. I want to sort by the highest total sales per region. So in this case, the only tricky thing is that you need to select one of the individual values. Okay, you don't want to select one of these sum values because it's going to affect the entire table. But in this case, I only want to sort. I want to keep the sort by region. So I need to select one of the individual values under region. Okay, see how region's up here, and these values are actually technically underneath of it. So that's why I'm going to select an individual value. Now that I've selected this individual value under total sales, you can either right click and go to sort, or just like we did in the other video, go to the home tab, go over here to sort and filter in the editing group, and then click, let's do largest to smallest, because I want the highest total at the top. I do that, and you'll see that it's still arranged, or excuse me, it's sorted by region. However, within each region, it's sorted by highest total sales. So it's sorted by region and then by total sales, as opposed to then by salesperson. Okay, I'm just going to quickly undo that sort real quick. Actually, I'll just click undo up here. There we go. Okay, now I'm going to just quickly get rid of some of these. Now to get rid of, to deconstruct your pivot table and get rid of fields, it's the same exact process. You can click and drag and just take in each individual field and just put it back up in this area, and it will disappear from the pivot table. You can also click on the little drop down next to each and click on remove field. That will work as well. So I'm just going to take salesperson here and put it up here for now, and that gets rid of salesperson. Now let's quickly talk about this little filter area. Now the filter area is really only useful if you are filtering by one value from a particular field, okay, one value only. So I'm going to put I'm going to move region from my rows area and put it up here under filters. And you'll notice that now what it's doing is it's giving me this filter up here on the pivot table. It says region all. So basically it's just, I can click on this and select the thing I want to look at, the specific value I want to look at. And in fact, let me come back over here real quick to my pane. I'm going to take salesperson and put it back under rows. Okay, so let's go to region here. And on the pivot table itself, I'm going to click on this little filter drop down. I'm going to, let's say I want to look at Great Lakes. I want to look at the salespeople from the Great Lakes region only. So I'm just going to click on Great Lakes. Sorry about that. Maybe, excuse me. Click on the select multiple items box first down here. And then from there, I can click only the ones I need, or I can click all and select all of them. So let's say I only want to look at Great Lakes. I've checked off only Great Lakes. I'm going to click on OK. So now it's filtering it by the Great Lakes region. It gives me each salesperson and then their number of orders and their total sales. And again, if I wanted to sort by total sales or sort by number of orders, I could do that just like we did before. Now, if I wanted to, let's go back to this filter real quick. Now, let's say I want to look at Great Lakes and Mid-East. I could check off both. Click OK, and it will show me both. The only disadvantage to this is that I don't know to which region each salesperson belongs. So I lose that data when I use that filter option. Okay, so that's why I'm saying if you're only using one value from a particular field, you can use the filter. Otherwise, it's not always the most useful thing to use. You're better off just organizing those fields under the rows area down here on the right. Okay, so let me just quickly, I'm going to clear this filter first. I'll just select all. And now I'm just going to come down here and I'm going to just completely deconstruct this pivot table, and I'm going to show you how to build it by question. So let's just go up down here and just click and drag all these back up into this area and just get rid of it. Back to square one here. Okay, so our first question, which salesperson sold the highest number of orders? So first thing I would ask myself is, how many fields am I dealing with? I'm dealing with 2, salesperson and the number of orders. So I don't need region and total sales. Okay, so very simple. Since numerical data typically goes in the values area, I'll put number of orders under values. Salesperson, I'll put under rows. So I want to know who sold the highest number of orders. So I'm going to come over here to my number of orders, click on a value in the home tab in the editing group, click sort and filter, click largest to smallest, and I see it was Monroe here with 870. I just quickly sorted the values so it brought the largest to the top. Okay, very simple. And notice how we built the pivot table based on the question. So we didn't need to use every field. So it just made it that much easier. So now let's just do another one quickly. So I'm just going to deconstruct it completely and build it from scratch again. How about this one? In the Great Lakes region, which salesperson had the highest total sales? So again, let's ask, how many fields are we dealing with? It looks like 3. We're dealing with region, salesperson, and total sales. So again, I'm going to put total sales under values because typically we put numerical data in the values area. Okay, now there are a couple of ways to do this. We're only dealing with one value from regions, Great Lakes. So I could use the filter, but first let's just build it in rows. So I'm going to come over here and remember, broad to specific. So I'm going to put region first, followed by salesperson. If you make a mistake, you can move these around down here. Okay. So region followed by salesperson. I only want to know Great Lakes. So I'm going to come up here to my row labels, click on this, go down to my filter, undo select all, click on only Great Lakes, click OK. Now it's showing me only Great Lakes. And now I need to know the highest total sales, so I'll come over here to a value, go up here to the editing group, click sort and filter, click largest to smallest, and there we have it. It's showing me that Lee here had the highest total sales in the Great Lakes region. Okay, so now I'm just going to come over here to my row labels. I'm just going to make sure I clear these filters. Clear filter from region. Okay, great. Now, again, another way I could do this, as I said before, is to move region up here to the filters. And then I could just, I can come over here to the filter, unselect all, click on Great Lakes, click OK, and I would have the same exact information. Okay, so that's another option. Let's move on to the third question. I'm going to deconstruct this table quickly and start from scratch again. Question number 3. In the Southeast and Southwest regions, which sales people had the highest total sales? So how many fields am I dealing with? 3. Region, salesperson, and total sales. However, this time I'm dealing with 2 values from the regions field. So using that filter will probably not come in too handy. So let's just stick to rows. So again, total sales, numerical data will go under the values area. And again, I'm going to put region first under rows and then salesperson. Oh, looks like that filter's stuck. So let me get rid of that. Clear filter from region. There we go. Okay. Now I'm going to come over here to my row labels filter. I'm going to deselect by clicking the select all box. And then I only want to know Southeast and Southwest. So I'm just going to click on both of those boxes. Click OK. Now I just need to sort by highest total sales. So I'm going to click on an individual value. This time I'll use the right click. So I'll right click on it. I'll go to sort largest to smallest. So I know that for Southeast it was Monroe, and for Southwest it was Barton. Notice how it's keeping it per region. That's why we select an individual value. Okay, and again, just to reiterate this, if I move region up to filters, okay, it's still filtered by Southeast and Southwest. However, I lose that specific information. I don't know to which region each salesperson belongs. That's why in this case, I would not use the filter. Okay, so let's deconstruct this. We'll do a couple more questions here. Okay, so these next 2 are going to be a little different. Okay, I'm going to introduce one more thing. So let's say our question is this. In the New England region, what was the average number of orders sold? So first of all, as always, how many fields are we dealing with? 2. Region and number of orders. So let's just get that set up quickly. Number of orders under values and region in rows. Oh, there's that. I forgot to undo my filter. Let me just clear that. And there we go. Okay, so the only thing is the question asked us the average number of orders. Now, as a default, the pivot table is giving you the sum. It's adding them. So what we have to do is we can actually change the specific operation or the function. So let's come down here to the values area, to the field where it says sum of number of orders, and click on that drop down. And you'll see an option at the bottom, value field settings. Let's click on that. And it launches a little dialog box. And you'll notice under summarize value field by, you can actually change the type of calculation. So I'm going to click on average, I'll click OK, and now show me the average number of orders. Okay, so we want to know the highest number of average number or I'm sorry, we want to know the average number for the New England region. So I can come over here to my filter, deselect all my options, click on only New England, click OK, and we see it was 775. Okay, so remember, you can change the calculation. All right, let me just, before I do anything, I'm going to clear this filter, and then I'm going to deconstruct my table again. We're going to do one more question here. Okay, now this one's a little trickier. How many salespeople does each region employ? So first of all, how many fields are we dealing with? 2, salespeople or salesperson and region. However, it's not asking us to identify the salesperson. It's asking us how many salespeople. So really what we're dealing with is a numerical calculation, or we're dealing with numerical data. So even though I'm pulling from the this text data under salesperson, it's really asking me to quantify it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put salesperson in the values area instead of rows. And then I'm going to put region under rows. Now look what it's doing. As a default, since I'm incorporating text data into the values area, what Excel is doing is changing the operation from sum to count. So it's just telling me how many individual values belong to each region, in this case, individual salespeople. So I see that for each region, there are 4 salespeople. So it did that automatically. It just, because it was text data, it changed from sum to count, which just means it's counting the individual values. Okay, so let me just deconstruct here. Let's just get back to where we were in the beginning. I'm just going to put number of orders under values, total sales under that. I'm going to put region under rows, and then salesperson under region. Okay, so we went through all our questions, and just one more thing to note is that, again, the big benefit to using a pivot table is that you won't potentially mess up your original data over here. Now, in a situation where you need to update your data, okay, the pivot table will not update automatically, but it's very simple. So, for example, let's go over here to our first salesperson, Alan, here in row 2. Let's say someone put in the number of orders wrong. It wasn't 680. It was actually, let's just put in 900, just to make it, a big difference. I'm going to put in 900, and I'll press enter. And you'll notice it's updating the total sales, because the total sales is a calculation or a formula. Now, if I look down here in my pivot table under Allen in the Rocky Mountains region, I see it's still 680. So if I need to update my, pivot table, first of all, I just need to click on the pivot table. That way I get my contextual tab back, pivot table tools. I'm going to come here to the Analyze tab, go to the Refresh drop down in the data group, click on Refresh All, and you'll see Alan now says 900 and the updated total sales as well. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this video. I just walked you through these steps to create a pivot table and showed you how to build your pivot table based on your specific question. Okay, so good luck if you want to try this on your own, and take care.